address, if you will, illegal immigration. And what's happened with other states is Alabama's law is being challenged. We know what's going on in Arizona. We saw the legislature here pass tougher illegal immigration crackdown here in the state of Georgia. Address this from the national standpoint. The feds are alleged not to be doing the job of deporting and going after illegal immigration. We'll try your microphone now.
We're going to try it again. Is it working?
I don't think so.
I apologize. The immigration is a huge issue. It is a huge issue because the United States government has abdicated its responsibility in enforcing immigration. I want to pay tribute to Senator Chambliss for a minute, and I appreciate the kind words he said about me, so I'll pay him back for a second. But he has been a yeoman worker on behalf of immigration, understanding securing our borders first is the predicate for having a workable guest worker program for the agricultural industry and the employment industry in America. We have a three-step process. Process number one is we need enforcement on our borders, part of which is investing in a biometrically secure visa. There are 43 legal ways to enter the United States of America. Every one of those visas is a paper and pencil visa. If we had a biometrically secure visa like we have on passports now, where a retina scan or a fingerprint acknowledges that the person with the visa is the person who's holding it, you end illegal immigration because there's no place to hide with a false document. That's the federal government's responsibility, and we're working hard to do that. Secondly, you need ideas that cause people to make the right decisions when they come to America. Saxby had a guest worker program that was a great idea, 10 months in, 2 months out. That causes someone to come and be able to work in our fields and our farms, but go home for 2 months so they don't establish a residency year-round. That helps promote exactly what you want, a guest worker who is legal. As long as we put off dealing with this problem in Washington, states are going to be forced to do nothing else other than what Georgia's done, Alabama's done, and Arizona's done. And that is react to the hue and cry of Americans who see people they perceive to be illegal, sometimes they are, sometimes they aren't, in our court system, in our judicial system, in our public schools, and in our nursing homes, and in our emergency rooms. We need to get it right, and it's Washington's fault. We need to work hard to see to it we enforce our border, but we have a legal flow of immigration coming to this country to meet the demands of American business.
Thank you, Senator. Congressman, if you'll follow up, your view on the illegal immigration.
The activity that Georgia has undertaken is solely because of a failure of the action of the federal government. The American people want to be able to trust the federal government and what they're doing in this area, but they don't because the history has demonstrated that the federal government hasn't done its job of first and foremost controlling and securing the border. We're a very generous country. If the border were controlled and secured, which only needs to be accomplished through political will, it's not resources that we lack to do this, because it ought to be a priority of our country, and it's not the manpower that we lack in order to do this, and it's not the technology. It can be done. The only thing that's lacking is the political will on the part of Washington. Once that happens, then the debate about the level of visas and the number of individuals that we would want to come here legally changes completely. And that's what has to occur first for the men and women in this audience and the great folks across this state have confidence that the federal government is going to do its job as it relates to the border.
Very well. We're out of time. I wish we had more time. I'd like to keep talking to you all afternoon, but these folks got to get back to work. We do have time for some questions here this afternoon, though. And if you have a question for Senator Isakson or Congressman Price, this would be the time to ask that question. Yeah. I know there must be at least one. Over here. Yes, sir.
It's not working because the jobs in the economy, Senator, Congressman, what the status of the free trade agreement?
Okay, Senator Isakson, you want to tackle that? Free trade agreement is the question.
I really appreciate you asking the question, because one of the most important things America can do and Congress can do is to pass the Colombian, Panamanian, and Korean free trade agreement. Just to Georgia alone, the Korean free trade agreement for our beef and cattle industry will be a $1.5 billion increase in business. We need to be sure that American products are no longer taxed and tariffed out of competitive value in these countries. Right now, we're not on a level playing field. The President has said on 2 or 3 occasions, including his State of the Union speech, that he wanted to bring the free trade agreements to the floor, but he hasn't done it yet. The last night we were in session, we did reach an agreement on trade promotion assistance and the 3 trade agreements, where there will be some votes on all 4 of those things this fall. It is my sincere hope that all 3 of the free trade agreements will pass, because that's the fundamental foundation of expanding agriculture and technology exports from Georgia through the port of Savannah and Brunswick to the Far East and to Europe.
Congressman Price, would you like to respond to that question?
Yeah, thanks. This is so incredibly important. These aren't just free trade agreements. These are export opportunity agreements, and that's exactly how they ought to be seen, because these 3 agreements will create hundreds of thousands of jobs for Americans and result in billions of dollars of increased businesses for American businesses, thereby creating the increase in jobs. But this is one of the areas that is so sad when you look to Washington. These agreements have been ready for over 4 years. And all it takes is the president to send the agreements up to the Congress and have them be adopted by the United States Congress. They've already been negotiated. And in that period of time, what's happened is that the European Union has jumped ahead of us. Canada has jumped ahead of us in terms of their agreements with these countries, and they're taking away market share. And so once again, you see Washington in action that is resulting in a tamping down on the ability of our economy to work. So as Senator Isakson said, we think we have an agreement now to be able to bring these bills to the floor, the agreements through committee and to the floor, and I hope that we do that in very short order after we get back in September.
All right, one more. I see one over here. Okay, back here, I'm sorry.
Sir, I was asking about the cuts that are going to be made and the proposed by the Defense Business Board about military retirement and TRICARE cuts. The plan states a huge cut, which would be about $800,000 per person that we would lose in our retirement, all because it costs the government too much. I think we've given our country a lot that our retirement should not be cut. What are your thoughts?
Senator Isakson.
Well, judging from the response to your question, I don't think anybody in this room thinks that your benefits should be cut, and I don't either. As a member of the Veterans Committee in the Senate, I spend a significant amount of my time on veterans issues, and because of the tremendous growth of veterans, because of the last 2 conflicts in Afghanistan and Iraq, the United States of America owes at the very least the commitment it made to those soldiers when they volunteered to fight and protect this country. I know of no program being recommended in Washington, nor have I heard the words uttered that federal retirement for our veterans should be cut or that TRICARE should be cut. The single subject that raised the question on TRICARE, as you know, veterans are in tiers based on years of service, based on economics and other things. There was some talk of co-payments on pharmaceuticals for level 6 and 7 veterans. Other than that, I know of no expense that's been recommended. I know of no cut that's been recommended. And I, for one, am not going to let it happen over my dead body. I can promise you that.
Well, Johnny's absolutely right. There's no impetus for any reduction at all in either veterans' pension or in health care. Where we have had a problem, however, is that TRICARE is tied in many ways to the Medicare payment formula for providers. And so what happened with the health reform bill that was passed last year is that it decreased the money going into Medicare and thereby decreasing by extension the formula as it relates to TRICARE by about $500 billion. And that doesn't take effect until 2014. But if that were to come to pass, then there is I believe, there is a threat in terms of the formula, to the reimbursement of providers in the area of TRICARE. I believe, as I know my colleagues do, that the individuals participating in the TRICARE program ought to have the highest level of care and the greatest number of choices in terms of quality of care, and therefore ought to have greater flexibility in where your care is provided. Many military veterans live in communities where they don't have access necessarily to a facility that will accept TRICARE. We believe that it ought to be expanded significantly so that the private sector can pick up some of that significant slack. Again, there are wonderful, positive ways to solve these things if we don't always look to government to do it.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you, Congressman. We appreciate your time today.
Thank you.
Very good.
Thank you so much. Good job. Thank you, John.